Please enjoy this encore presentation of The Way Home.
Welcome to The Way Home with Laura Smith, the show that brings you wonderful guests, helpful advice, and uplifting stories. The Way Home. Live inspired. Here's your host, Laura Smith.
Happy Easter, everyone. I'm so grateful today to have a wonderful friend who is also, he was the head minister at a very unique church in New York City for almost a decade, the Marble Collegiate Church. It's like the oldest congregation on the island of Manhattan. And he was the senior minister there. I used to go and see him all the time, but now he teaches in universities. He does specials on Christ on television. He does PBS wonderful series about living a loving and purposeful life. Dr. Michael Brown is going to join me for my special Easter edition Sunday today. I'm so grateful for that. Easter is one of my all-time favorites. I love the theme around everything that we were, we grew up learning about the life of Christ and then his subsequent crucifixion, which ended up as a happily ever after in the sense that, again, he was risen. So it's always been such a hopeful and beautiful day in my heart. And I wanted to honor that by having someone who is close to me in my heart as well, someone who I truly admire and who changed my life when I walked into a church where he was the senior minister many years ago when I walked into the church, but he remained there for almost a decade in New York City at one of the oldest congregations in America, which was the Marble Collegiate Church on 27th and 5th Avenue. And Dr. Michael Brown was such an inspiration when I went to church this one Easter Sunday, probably a decade ago, that I subsequently stayed in touch with him. One of the most erudite, interesting, profound, and incredible teachers, not only of the life of Christ and theology, religion and such, but just on the beautiful themes of God and religion, that of love and living a purpose, love-filled life. He has so many credits and books and TV specials now under his hat. He's truly ubiquitous because he's traveling everywhere as a preacher now, based in the South in North Carolina, but he travels around to other churches and he does motivational speaking in addition to preaching in various churches. He's got a couple of books coming out, which we'll talk about because they both sound completely fascinating. And he's just a light in the world. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Michael Brown, for being on the show today. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter, Laura, and thank you for inviting me. It's always a joy being with you.
Yeah, the first time I saw you was when I walked into that unbelievable, beautiful church in Manhattan. It's the church where Norman Vincent Peale was a preacher for 52 years, I believe it was.
Right.
Yes, and so I was drawn to it because of that, because I was a huge fan of his and his wonderful magazine, Guidepost magazine, and just loved his beautiful message. And in the middle of Manhattan, it was really a beacon of light. And when I went to the service, which was, I believe, an Easter service many years ago, you were preaching there, and I was captivated. I was inspired. I had tears of joy. It was just the most beautiful service that I could have imagined. And little did I know that you were so approachable, so kind in the vast middle of Manhattan. So we're talking thousands of people who would come to hear you every Sunday morning. And yet you would become a great friend just because you are so open to everyone. And I became a huge fan and started going back to that church ever so often. So here we are all these years later, I now in Indiana, you in North Carolina, far away from Manhattan, but nevertheless, you are doing so many wonderful things, and it makes me grateful that people get to really hear the things that you teach and can learn so much from your messages. So it's Easter Sunday, and you being the preacher that you are, what is your probably most favorite thing about Easter, and what does it mean to you when you do preach on an Easter Sunday? What is the message that you like to dwell upon?
Well, Laura, there are a couple of prongs of the fork. One is the theological, the biblical, the strictly religious. And at that point, if we're dealing with it, it's just this is the launch pad of Christianity. The largest faith in the world, well over 2 billion people currently, and throughout the last 20 centuries, and a faith like many other of the great global faiths that's changed the world. Without Easter, there is no Christianity. There's no Christmas. There's no anything else. Jesus would just have been yet another fairly popular blip on the screen for a brief period of time. So everything hinged on the resurrection. That's the religious side. The other side, where I think it connects with us in our life, in our journey, in our experience, is that Easter is a profound reminder of the gift of fresh starts and second chances. You know, that even when it seems to be over, it's not always over. Dr. Pill, you mentioned him, he used to say, it's always a little too early to give up. You know, and Easter's a good reminder of that when you come to what appears to be the absolute end of the rope, you're really not. There's something around the next corner if you just hang on, tie a knot and hang on to the end of the rope, because something yet is coming. That's a great Easter message for us. It's not to give up. We have a future.
We do have a future. I think that's an incredible way to look at it. What is so interesting, though, about the Easter trajectory of Jesus, and how just when you thought it was completely over, and every time you watch it on some iteration on a movie about the depiction of the crucifixion and such, you do have this incredible sense of elation, knowing that after that whole sadness, 3 days later, he's arisen. And then you think that's the end of the story, right? But then he appears to his loved ones, his beloved disciples, to Mary Magdalene. He appears to them again. So then you think that's maybe the end of the story, because now he's going to be alive again and walking amongst us. But then yet again, he ascends. And so there's not only is there a second chance, but it seems to be a third, fourth, and fifth, and it goes on eternally.
You know, one of the neat things, Laura, when you I teach some now, and I teach my students about this, that each of the Gospels tells the story, the birth story, the death story, and some of the life story in different ways, because at the time when they were written, the perspective and worldview of the author, the audience to whom he was writing. Luke, for example, has Jesus appearing primarily, at least initially, to outsiders. Luke's whole gospel is written to people who feel like they were on the outside looking in. It starts out with a teenage unwed mom and her soon-to-be husband getting shut out of the inn and having to have a baby in a cave. The whole announcement of that being made to third shift shepherds who were the lowest of the low. And then the whole Gospel of Luke, for example, is about Jesus' love for lepers and prostitutes and thieves and Samaritans. Well, at the very end, the resurrection, who does he appear to? He appears to a couple of guys going on a road from Jerusalem, one of whom is never even named. They're not disciples. They're not anybody. But in Luke, it's a way of saying, hey, this isn't for the religious hierarchy. This isn't for the seats of power. This story is for us all. Mark never has him appear at all. The women go to the tomb, it's empty, and the angel says, go to Galilee, and there you'll see him. What happened in Galilee? He healed the paralytic, he healed the blind, he blessed marriage at Cana, he raised the Jairus' daughter back to life. In Galilee, he was out there loving and helping people who felt alone and frightened and couldn't help themselves. So that Easter message, unlike, say, Luke, which is, if you feel like an outsider, you're not, the Mark message is, if you want to experience the risen Jesus, don't just hang around waiting for something miraculous. Go out there where people are in pain, where they cannot help themselves, where they're hungry, where they're sleeping beneath bridges, where they're abused, where they're suffering as a result of bigotry, fill in the blank. And when you help people, then you experience the risen power. So, you know, we read the four Gospels, and they're all profoundly different. But when you merge them together, what an exciting message Easter becomes, you know?
It is. And boy, I haven't heard it described quite like that before. But isn't that, well, that is your personal gift that I know about you, watching you minister and preach many, many Sundays. Captivating was one of the words that I used when I was describing you. And that was the thing that kept me going back, because a lot of times I would like to try different churches just to hear what their messages were. But I kept going back to Marble Collegiate when you were there, because I always felt that I got something that I could take with me into my week and actually incorporate into my day or into my thinking, into my heart. And so that became, I have a feeling that maybe you have some freshmen there that are just doing a required course in surfing the web and, doing Twitter while they're taking your class, but they're hearing you. And I am absolutely certain that some of them thought they were going in there just to fill a requirement, but they were leaving there somewhat transformed enough to be interested to take more. You are that kind of a teacher, a person, and a preacher. Dr. Brown, well, it is so very true, because it happened to me. I wasn't as young as a college student, but when I started listening to you, you have a couple of books coming out right now. You're not busy at all, but just a couple of books. And one's going to be coming out this year, correct? A Long Ago Birth in a Right Now World. Tell us about it.
That is a collection of stories about the birth narratives of Christ from the four Gospels. So what I do is take each of the Gospel authors, describe who they were, when they wrote, to whom they wrote, why they wrote, and then launch into how that shaped and crafted their version of the birth story, including Mark, who doesn't have one at all. He doesn't talk about the birth of Jesus at all. And there's a reason for that, why he wouldn't have had to, because he's so vastly earlier than Matthew, Luke, or John. So he's writing to people who knew the dramatic stories. He doesn't have any post-resurrection appearances. He was writing to people who had been there to a great extent. What he was trying to do is say, you know the glamour spots, the high points. Let me fill in what happened between here and there. It's not how he got here, it's what he did once he was. And that's kind of aside. But then you get to Matthew, and he writes this very Joseph-centric birth story because he is a Jewish Christian writing to a Jewish audience about a Jewish Messiah and has to link Jesus to David and Abraham, and Joseph is the link. Luke, you get in there, he writes a very Mary-centric birth story because he's writing to Gentiles and Romans who don't give a flip about being connected to Abraham or to David, but who feel like outsiders. So anyway, I start with, here's what was going on. And then John, he's writing in Greek, so his is all in your head, theological. I've described that. Here's what was going on. How does it translate to us? What do any of these stories have to do with our lives and our world in this particular moment, facing our situations? It all probably was birthed by preparing for last year's ABC Christmas Eve special. And there was a little interest around that in, well, is there more stuff? And so just put together, and that was a very, it was something that really dealt with human pain, with loneliness, with illness, with the after effects of COVID, and with the fact that in one sense or another, we're all shepherds. We're all out in the darkness.
Yes. And this was just this past Christmas, right? 2021.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this was a big ABC TV special. And were you the only one on it, or were there many special guests?
It was the Christmas Eve worship experience. The Interfaith Broadcast Commission produced it, and ABC carried it coast to coast. But it was filmed at High Point University. So I was the preacher of the evening. There were other liturgists and their music department, plus some additional musicians as well, Marcus Hammond and others. But it was...
was it fun to be on TV like that with this? It must have been a great experience.
Laura, I didn't think, once I left New York City, I didn't assume I'd ever have that opportunity again. And we used to do those at Marble, but it was because it was Marble.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever was the minister there, I knew that they wanted that great historic church. So I didn't assume I'd get to do another one. Therefore, I think it was, if anything, a little more special that suddenly I was asked, would you like to do one of these? When my first response was, I don't even have a church anymore. And they said, well, can you find a place? And all right, I'm teaching at this university. It's beautiful. And how about that? And it worked.
And
it was fun. It was fun. I loved it. And I love hearing from people that I'll never meet across the country, particularly those who say, I felt like a shepherd. I lost a loved one, or I'm living in a retirement center or a nursing home, or I've been dealing with illness and it found a little hope or something. That's a nice.
Oh, yes. You reminded me of one time when we had lunch. It was at the Ace Hotel in Nomad in Manhattan. And you and I are sitting there, and sitting all by himself at a table, just a few feet away from us, is the late, great Anthony Bourdain, of the wonderful chef who would travel all around the world. Was it Parts Unknown or something? He had some incredible series of TV shows. And I said, oh, my goodness, I would love to have him on my radio show. I was at WABC in New York at the time, and you were so great. You were like, go, talk to him. You were encouraging me to not.
Worst they can say is no. Yeah. And I thought I should be honored to be on your show.
Well, you were so kind to think like that. And I'm just thinking that this poor soul just wants to eat his lunch. And the last thing he wants is someone coming up to the table. But you gave me the courage. So I went over there and I said, hi, Anthony, I'm so sorry to bother you. I adore your work and blah, blah, blah. I'm on WABC. I have a radio show. I was hoping maybe you could come on and talk about the new TV show or something. He couldn't have been nicer. He said, oh, absolutely. He said, let me give you my publicist's name, and here's her phone number and her email address, and call her. And as soon as she says I can do it, I'll do it for you. He was the nicest guy. And sadly, he left that week, I think, to start filming that show. And the rest is history. He spent the rest of the years taping all over in far-flung countries, and that most exquisite. I absolutely love that series, but I never did get to have him on. But I'll never forget saying hello to him, and it was you that gave me the courage. You are a motivational guy.
that restaurant, a wonderful little restaurant, is right across the street from my office. And that day with you and Anthony Bourdain, that's memorable. May I tell you another story from that restaurant? I'll make it brief.
Oh, sure. Love it.
Okay, I'm sitting at lunch one day with Marianne Williamson, and we're discussing what we do and speaking, and I'm saying, pretty soon I'm going to leave New York, and I won't be a minister of a church anymore, but I still want to be out on the circuit speaking. And I said, Marianne and I are pretty close to the same age. And I said, what worries me is as I age, am I still going to be relevant, or will I be yesterday's news? Marianne said, there's something that you get only by living long enough, and that's experience. And she said, if you properly interpret experience, it becomes wisdom. And she is just lovely but direct. I mean, whatever hits her head comes out of her mouth.
Yes.
She looked across the table at me and she said, now, if you want to go hide in a hole somewhere with your experience and your wisdom, that's up to you. As for me, she said, I think I'm going to run for president. And I laughed, and lo and behold, she did. I mean, next thing you know, there she is on the debate stage. But I've always thought about that advice in that moment. If you live long enough, it's like the insurance commercial. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. If you live long enough and pay attention, you learn a few things. And so you reach an age of saying, do I throw that all away and hide in a hole, like she said? Or do we try to use that to make life maybe a little better for other people? Even though I never did make the leap to say I'm going to run for president. Marianne did.
She did. She absolutely did. I know her also. She is quite something. And she truly has, oh my gosh, she's a great talker also. I think I went to one of her talks one time and she spoke for 8 hours straight. She really just kept going, and she's got the wisdom too, and it's interesting stuff. But I think that's a really good point. Aging is an interesting process that you don't think about it until you're like a few decades in, and then you go, I can either run with this, I can either try to get better and be the best version of myself, or I can start going into all that, I'm getting old type of thing. And it really is perspective, which is, in some way people think maybe that's not spiritual, but I think it has everything to do with spirituality, how we see ourselves, and whether we're seeing ourselves, kind of as a spiritual reflection, or just kind of a body and a time machine that's, whose time is going to be up anytime soon. So it really helps.
Your life shouldn't end before your body does, and there's that myth that you reach a point where you no longer have anything to offer. You're just taking up space, and that is hugely mythological. And even in recent history, as we read about the lives of people, tremendous impact. They're not all under 40,
That's right.
In the political realm, nowadays, you look at the ages of leaders in both parties, in entertainment, in literature, medicine. I read an article last week about people who retire and then choose to go back to work because after retiring for a short while, they feel like some big something is missing. And it was talking about CEOs and people like that who are out of the workforce for a short period of time and go back, and it was listing some of the things they do, which I found fascinating. Former attorneys, former physicians who are now driving trucks, 18-wheelers. And you ask them, why? You don't have to do that. They said, we want to work. We want to see an entirely different slice of life than we had. We want to do something new, but we want to do. We want to be out there. We want to be busy. We want to contribute. Why not? Live while you're alive.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I've been a student of Christian Science for many years, and the woman who founded it back when slavery was being abolished in the 1800s, she went on to live into her, Mary Baker Eddy, and she ended up living into her 90s, and she, at age 85, now this is a woman from the Victorian era who was basically seen as property to most men of that time, and here she founded a movement, a church, a metaphysical college. She did 100 different things in her life. And at age 85, she decided that the press was just not fair, that it wasn't honest, and she wanted to start a newspaper that would harm no person but bless all mankind. That's what she called it. It's called the Christian Science Monitor. It has won more Pulitzer Prizes than almost any newspaper. It's still in circulation today. It's an absolutely brilliant piece of journalism that continues on to this day. But she decided that at 85, there's not another good paper around. I think I need to start one. And I loved that mentality. Her whole thing was never count your age, just keep living at your life your fullest.
I saw a news clip on TV recently. It was a 5-minute thing that a certain station does to lift up personalities that are of interest. And this particular day, they dealt with a physician in a small town, a town of about 800 people, so tiny little town, who has been practicing medicine there since the 1950s. He's 90 years old. He goes into his office 6 days a week. His daughter is his receptionist and files the insurance and things. And when they interviewed him, they said, are you ever going to retire? And he's 90. He said, yeah, probably someday. And they said, why not before 90? And he said, I practice medicine. There's sick people in our community and I can make them well. Why would I walk away? And it became really clear that he gets energy about it. He has fun doing it. It's his life. Arguably, I would say he may not have lived to 90 had he just decided to sit and watch the sun come up and go down. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but he invested himself in life to return his life.
And he was living his purpose. And you have that wonderful PBS series that you did, The Love Principle, 5 Steps to Loving and to a loving and purposeful life. And that's another wonderful one as well. And I just encourage everybody. My guest is the wonderful Dr. Michael Brown. He's a minister, a preacher, a writer, a professor, a motivational speaker, and so much more. I would say a healer of the heart, mind, and spirit. He is my guest today on Easter Sunday because I wanted somebody who just lifted me up all many years ago in Manhattan at the Marble Collegiate Church. But still, every time I think of you, Dr. Michael Brown, I get that same beautiful feeling of just oneness in Christ and God and purpose and living life to its absolute most blessed, fullest point. And you do that, and you're a great example. Everyone should check you out. Do you have a website people can go to find you, or should they just Google you?
I do, actually. It's drmichaelbbrown.com. www.
And is it DR, doctor? Yeah, doctor.
DrMichaelBBROWN. So if you leave out the middle B, you get somebody else. There is another Dr. Michael Brown who is
a hypnotist or something.
Well, he's in ministry. He's very popular, but he's I think very political, and yes. He and I are not. We don't play on the same ball field at all.
That is correct. So when you go to find his website, it's Dr. Michael B. Brown, Michael letter B, Brown.com.
There you
Dr.
go.
Brown, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for being here, and
Laura,
God bless you and your family.
It was always a joy, and I hope you will have a happy Easter, and all the resurrection goodness will rise up for you today, and your listeners.
And you as well. I thank you for that. Thank you for listening to The Way Home. Each and every one of you are a part of The Way Home family, and we just wish for nothing but great happiness and safety and good health and prosperity, success, everything that you can possibly have to make your life a good one. And we'll see you next time on The Way Home. I'm Laura Smith.
Podcasts by Federated Media.